This was my second attempt at the CSE. In my first attempt, I did not clear my prelims. And in the second attempt, this was basically my first mains experience. And I did a BCom. I was also pursuing chartered accountancy along with it. So I think we should quickly start discussing things because I have also felt very anxious at this point of time when I had my mains last year when a lot of little time was left. So I think we should maximize on this opportunity and just start discussing.
Okay, fair enough. Alright, so quickly tell me, let us just quickly move into the paper. How you attempted the papers? What was your approach when you were attempting the papers? What was your method of writing the answers? Did you attempt all the questions? Did you write paragraphs or you used bullet points?
Okay, so a lot of questions. Let's start one by one. So first, about attempting all the questions, I think I made it a rule that the basic prerequisite to at least get a good score is at least finishing all the paper. So I made sure I attempt all the 20 questions, and maybe I would compromise on the quality of one or two questions that I did not do. There obviously were questions in each of the GS papers that I had no idea about, one or two questions. So I would, instead of skipping it altogether, I would maybe give it a 3 or 4 minute and save those 3 minutes to use it in some answer where I can get an edge. But I would attempt all the questions. So this was one strategy. Second, about attempting in paragraphs or in bullet points, I think in ethics, I preferred the paragraphs over bullet points, but in the other papers, I did in terms of 1, 2, 3, 4, or numbering the statements that I write, and also writing many dimensions of the answer. So, for example, even if the question does not ask you to give a conclusion or give a way forward, I would make sure that I write a way forward in a lot of answers. So even in GS1, the questions of geography and environment, I would like to give it a contemporary touch because we already read a lot of stuff. For example, we will read mains 365 of environment, and that can be easily used in an answer of geography. Adding 2 lines in the end would make that answer so much more relevant. So I think I like to do that. And how did I attempt my paper? So as soon as I get my paper for the JS, the 5 minute of the reading time, I would not use it to go through the entire 20 questions because anyway you have to read it when you attempt it. So I will use those 5 minutes to start from question number 11 because that's a 15 marker. So I made sure that I don't compromise on the quality of 15 markers. So from question number 11, I'll start framing answers in my mind, that what is to be written. So I'll, in that 5 minutes, I'll at least try to do 2 or 3 questions. I'll frame it in my mind so that I'm able to write it in 11 minutes next. So as soon as the writing time starts, I'll use my 11 minute each. And it was a strict 11 minute timer, maximum 12 minute. I would never exceed beyond 12 minutes. So in 11 minute each, I would try to attempt those 10 questions, which makes it 110 minutes. And then I will not start from question 10, rather start from question 1 because question 1 ultimately is the first question that the examiner is going to check. So from question 1 to question 10, then I will attempt 7 minutes each. That makes it 70 minutes. That is the exact 3 hour, and that was my exact plan. But obviously there were questions that I did not know in between. So that would take only 3 or 4 minutes and I could manage on the minutes that I had exceeded. So this was the way I attempted the paper.
Right. Two peculiar things that I noticed in CSM 2022 were, first, that there were a lot of questions in GS3 which were very factual. And if you don't know the answers, then you cannot, speculate and you cannot write here and there. You should know the exact answer to those questions. So how did you attempt those questions? Did you know already कि भाई ये इस particular question में यही answer लिखना है? Yeah, you did some speculations and wrote something here and there. Like what was your attitude first and what was your approach towards such questions?
Okay, so in GS3 specifically, that was a paper that intimidated me a lot in the beginning. So I studied a lot for GS3, specifically for the science portion, because I have been seeing over the past years questions in science were very weird and vague for me. For example, the question on blue LED. Even last year there were questions on James Webb Telescope. If you know it, it's a bingo because you can get a very good score. If you don't know it, you can't write anything. And I think that doesn't make sense also. Just filling the paper will waste your time a lot. So for that, I believe whatever material you have read for science for the prelims, I think it needs to be revised for the mains also because we keep on delving into the mains aspect of science. But I think these days the prelims aspect is also being asked in science. So that is one thing how you can prepare for it. And second, I would not leave the question blank. For example, in GS2 also, there was a question on the election of Indian president and the French president. So I tried to maximize in 1.5 pages or 2 pages, I had written the election of Indian president because I knew it well. So I would write it in a manner that I get a maximum marks. And then I wrote the heading as election of French president, and I wrote just one line that it is that the French president is elected indirectly, because I did not know the answer. I did not want to cook up an answer. How can one cook up an answer that has a actual answer? So I think I would not suggest cooking up answers or just speculating, but try to write something that is closer to it. But if there are just concepts, like there was a very vague question in GS3 about cellulose and the and whatever processes take place to break it down. So in that, you can anyway guess that any organic matter will go through decomposition or all of that stuff. So something close to that you can write, but not something that is really absurd, because I think it irritates the examiner also, and it wastes your time also.
Right. And another peculiar thing that I was talking, GS4 के अंदर ना, the questions which are framed, तो part A के questions are very very lengthy. ठीक है, it was taking a lot of time to read those questions. And part B के, which is related to the case studies, उसमें भी questions were not only lengthy but more importantly themes were repeating. ठीक है, वही जो ABCD जो options होते हैं जिनको तुमको सब parts होते हैं, सारे सब parts same ही थे. So I want to know two things कि आने the candidates who are appearing for CSM 23 उनके साथ भी ये चीज हो सकती है. तो इसमें मेरे को दो चीजें जाननी है. एक तो how did you manage your time to actually read a lengthy paper and then attempting all the questions, because you are saying कि मैंने पूरा पेपर attempt किया. So first, how did you manage your time? और secondly, वो case studies को how did you break it down? Because same case studies, बहुत लंबी case studies, same sub parts और parts में answer करना must be very difficult. तो ये दो चीज कैसे की?
Okay. Sir, so the first thing about the subparts and everything, so I clubbed them. For example, part A में they are asking कि what are the options that you can create out of it, and part B में if they are asking कि इसके pros and cons बताओ. So I would write A and B together. It will save my time, it will save my space, because एक जगह I'll write point A में these are the three options. In second paragraph I'll write those options again and then write pros and cons. Instead I wrote A and B, or if there were two options that I thought I could answer together in a better manner, I would write C and D and I would answer. I did that in my last attempt, and I think this is the way you can save time in your in this paper. About reading it very quick, I think I read a lot of case studies. I read around 100 case studies before I went to the paper. So the spirit of the case studies I was very easily able to identify. जैसे ही case study पढ़ा, पता चल गया कि almost broad इस line पर पूछा है, because there is no new case study that can be asked. I think इतने themes identify हो चुके हैं, almost उसी lines पर पूछे जाएंगे. तो इतना broad spectrum कर लेना है अपनी reading का, that whenever you get a new case study, आपको initial 5 lines में ही पता चल जाए, अच्छा यहाँ पर ये characters है, मतलब ये वाला scene unfold होने वाला है. So I did this कि मतलब थोड़े बहुत, और फिर about the values that you are going to write, सब कुछ इतना similar आ रहा था. In the first and second question, I felt that मैंने exact copy कर दिया the values that I have written. Then I went back and read a question, did a part A, because I used to attempt case studies पहले and the part A बाद में. So then I went on to do 2 questions first. फिर उससे कुछ नए words मिल गए मुझे from the question itself, because इस बार का तो question भी case study जितना बड़ा था. So then I picked up some values from there and I used it in my case study itself, because I was out of words that point of time. But I think to solve this problem, one thing you need to do is increase your reading speed by reading up a lot of case studies. You always do not need to practice. इतनी सारी case studies की booklets available है. Maybe just read 10 case studies a day and आपको बहुत सारी values मिल जाएगी. Keep those values in handy. किसी case study में values को in terms of let's say justice versus fairness करके लिख दिया, किसी में statement के form में लिख दिया, किसी में diagrammatically लिख दिया. सबको अलग अलग तरीके से present करेंगे. हर case study को एक मैकेनिकल मैनर में आंसर नहीं करेंगे कि ये हमने सीख लिया. फॉर एग्जाम्पल आई ऑल्सो वॉज इन दिस अप्रोच कि टेस्ट सीरीज में ये सीखा कि स्टेक होल्डर्स बना देने हैं, फिर ऐसे लिखना है, बट दैट डज नॉट वर्क फॉर मी. मुझसे नहीं होता, बिकॉज आई फाइंड माई पेपर वेरी बोरिंग. सो आई नेवर अटेम्प्टेड 2 केस स्टडीज इन द सेम मैनर. And case studies में one thing I always say, I have learned this from my friend and I think it works for me. is to give something or the other for every stakeholder. अगर सबसे छोटा stakeholder भी है ना जो आपको पढ़ के लग रहा है कि इसके बारे में तो पूछा भी नहीं question, just write one line for him or her कि इसके लिए भी ये करना चाहिए. Because ultimately our vision is कि most vulnerable rung of the society को empower करना है. तो वो आपके answer में वो vision आना चाहिए that you are also interested in the most vulnerable part. So I think I did that also.
Right. And also tell me about your approach, let's say towards GS2, because one block in GS2 has polity and constitution, which is very, very static in nature. But I feel that Lakshmikant is not enough, or Lakshmikant is not sufficient as far